Welcome to the Stark Reflections on Writing and Publishing podcast. There has never been a better time for writers. More information, options, and opportunities are available to you, but navigating these requires insight. Join Mark Leslie Lefebvre as he draws upon more than a quarter century of experience as a writer, a bookseller, and a trusted book industry consultant to explore and reflect on the writing and publishing landscape to help you make informed choices on your writer journey.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 15 of the Stark Reflections podcast. This is your host, Mark Leslie Lefebvre, and in today's episode, I have a chat with the smooth and sexy-toned Kevin Tumlinson. Kevin is an award-winning and best-selling author with books available in hundreds of countries worldwide. The long-standing career in film, television, radio, and podcasting, Kevin is a seasoned world traveler and has produced documentary programming in films ranging from historic aviation to military history. His debut novel, a thriller, and the first in his Dan Kotler Archeological Thriller series, was a 2006 Shelf Notable Indie Award winner. Kevin's love for history, archaeology, and science has been a tremendous resource for his writing. With thrillers, science fiction, and genre-crossing books, including the nonfiction titles The 30-Day Author and Writing a Better Book Description, Kevin has more than 30 novels, novellas, and stories under his belt. He lives in Texas, but works in random coffee shops, cafes, and hotel lobbies around the world, and I was fortunate enough to have a chat with Kevin, which you're about to hear soon. But I wanted to share a few updates from previous episodes right now. One of the things goes back to episode 13 where I interviewed author T.S. Paul. Now, Scott had informed me, I think during the podcast, he was talking about the fact that he was on track to make $1,000 for the month of March, and I promised I would share how he actually ended up doing. He informed me just recently that he hit $1,189 on Kobo alone, which was several $100 more than the previous month. And so far, in the first week of April, he's been averaging more than $50 a day on Kobo, which is obviously tracking to be much higher. Amazing and interesting growth to see that that's what he's doing on only Kobo. And again, that's a platform that many authors say it takes a long, long time to build a following. But as he has been building his following, it has obviously been a little bit shorter in coming. He hasn't had to wait as long. The growth has been quite fascinating to follow. Some of the other follow-ups is my walk, my crawl towards the Waterloo Half Marathon at the end of April, at the end of this month. And those of you who've been paying attention noticed that I had slowed down in some of my training. I did some nasty things in terms of the training. The treadmill broke, and then I got the flu, and it's been so cold, I haven't been running outside. Well, the good news is Liz bought me an outdoor running jacket. And last week, before the last relapse of winter happened, which just happened this weekend where we got more snow and freezing cold temperatures, Liz and I did an extended outdoor run. Where she works is about 11 kilometers away from the house. So we decided we would meet each other halfway. I dropped her off in the morning, and then in the afternoon we sort of texted each other, said, okay, go, we'll meet you halfway, which would be about 5.5 kilometers, and then we would run back. So that would give us an 11K run. Well, of course, I messed up and I went in the wrong direction, and I ended up doing more than 15 or 16K that day. So it was sort of like an overkill to get back into the training, and have since done a few shorter and longer runs. And later on today, this is Thursday, April 5th when I'm recording this, we will be heading off to, we have a limited gym membership because again, the temperatures got so cold, we decided to go with a 14-day membership so we could at least do some of the running on a treadmill inside. So I am slowly inching my way towards that marathon or half marathon, which will be good. And in other news, I have been writing more short fiction, which has been very, very satisfying. I'm working on a short piece that I have to have done well before the 20th of the month, and I've been on track to get that done. And then I also launched the Free Fright Fridays, which I will be using to showcase some of my new short fiction as well as some of my previous short fiction. But again, that's just trying to get back into the game where writing is the priority for much of my days. Yes, this podcast and doing some of the consulting that I do is fun and important to me, but I have to always make sure that writing stays at the top, because in my previous career, working as an industry representative, I let the 60 to 80 hour work weeks that I loved and adored, I let that take precedence over my writing. And so I am still struggling with that balance, even though I'm not working full time at any office. I'm still struggling with that balance, just like you probably are struggling with that, work, writing, life balance that we all have to struggle with. I wanted to pause to say thank you to my new Patreon supporters. Thank you, Julie Strauss, and thank you, D.H. Dunn. You can find links to my patron websites on the Patrons tab on starkreflections.ca, but thank you, DH and Julie, for your patronage. Your patron support helps pay for my time in producing the show, and it demonstrates that you value this free content as well as the additional content that I'll be providing for Patreon supporters. Speaking of supporters, it's now time to move on to the terrible tongue twister. Apparently I can't even say tongue twister. To the terrible tongue twister segment of the show, which I'm calling Twisting by the Fool. Twisting by the, twisting by the, twisting by the, twisting by the fool, twisting by the fool, twisting by the fool. Such a fool. Okay. For today's terrible tongue twister, sponsored by Findaway Voices, I'm going to open this. But first, just to throw a little fun into the mix, I'm going to do this one in the voice of John Cleese's character at the French Castle from Monty Python's Holy Grail. Let's get into the voice here. You don't fraternage English, pig dogs! Go and boil your bottoms under a silly person. Ah, blow my nose at you, so-called Arthur King. You and all your silly English kniggets. Okay, all right, I think I got that. No, I don't quite have it. I need to practice a little bit more. Ah, fart in your general direction. Your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. Okay, there, I have it. It's always good to warm up, you see. All right, so we have, say this 5 times really fast. Tom threw Tim 3 thumbtacks. 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 Ah, fart at you, you stupid twisted twister. Okay, Tom threw Tim 3 thumbtacks was what I was supposed to say, and I think I got 4 of them in there, or maybe 3 good ones. In any case, I did blow my nose and fart a few times during that one. Thank you, Will. Always a pleasure. If you're interested in audiobooks where the narrators don't blow their nose in your general direction or have gas, you can check out starkreflections.ca/findaway for more information. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I never got to get on Writing Life, so.
Well, you're going to be on an even better podcast now, right? And maybe now Chrissy will hear this and go, "Wow, Kevin's such a great guest. Why haven't we had him on yet?" I'm sure she's working on it, but only so many things you can do.
Right.
You are a Renaissance man. You are an author, you're a podcaster, you're also a representative of one of the most respected author-friendly aggregators out there for small publishers and indie authors. I want to first start with your writing. How long have you been writing, and when did you know that you first wanted to become a writer?
I tell everyone, and it's true. This is true, but I tell everyone that I wrote my first book when I was 5 years old, and it was
Really?
yeah, it was written on one of those big chief notepads
Okay.
that you learn to write on with one of those big fat pencils. Yeah, and I wrote a story about meeting a kid who was naked and sitting on a log because he was poor, and I had my main character, of course, was me, and I had to help him, get clothes and food and that sort of thing. So it was a touching story, but it was the start. My family realized right away, this kid's gonna do some stuff. He's got an active imagination, and they gave me a tape recorder for Christmas one year. With a big bag of those cheap, like dollar store cassettes.
Yes.
And I proceeded to just dictate. I was a big fan of Encyclopedia Brown.
Okay.
And I just dictated my own versions of those stories.
So you were like the professional narrator for the Encyclopedia Browns that have yet to be released.
Right. Yeah. Sobel, I think the guy's name. I can't remember his name right now, but he needs to reach. I think he may have passed, but I think he needs to reach. And if you haven't passed, I'm sorry. I don't mean to start rumors of your premature demise, but yeah. So and then once I got into high school, I was actually at 12 years old, I was recruited by the local paper to kind of cover a teen beat kind of thing. I'd sort of, because I was always a writer, and I think a guy came to our school and spoke at our school,
right?
And I was in a journalism class, and I caught someone's attention, and I was asked to write a recurring column, sort of a teen beat focused thing. Go to football games, go to dance halls, things like that. Teen dance halls, and just write about them. And I did that. So that was my first professional writing gig. I got paid for that. $10 a column.
Hey, it's still money is money, right? $10 is $10.
Exactly. And $10 plus I got in free everywhere. I mean, so it was the start of a career, honestly.
You had a press pass, right?
Yeah. And and eventually I always wrote fiction. Eventually in college, I went through that whole thing where I'm like, okay, I'll go do something. I'll learn how to do something, an actual job, get an actual skill, so that maybe one day I can retire and write. Never really clicking to the fact that I was already writing. I was already making money. I could have made that the career. So I had a whole bunch of I worked in radio, film, television. I've done all kinds. I was an engineer for a while. I've done all kinds of things. Worked as a private investigator briefly. I took a lot of routes.
So when did you actually return to the writing life?
So in my 20s, I was in college. I was broke, so I didn't have much entertainment. I couldn't afford cable, so I wrote, and I wrote a couple of books that one of which I never actually finished, but one of which I did finish. And I managed to get a contract for it. I managed to get a traditional contract for it. And after kind of sitting with it, I got a very nice advance, but a terrible contract. Once I kind of started figuring some things out, my nice advance was going to have to go entirely to paying for travel and marketing expenses and things related to promoting the book. And so I made the tough decision to give that money back. And I'd already spent some of it. I bought a motorcycle. I had to dip into my savings and pay back that money. So it made for some hard times, but I kind of thought, that's it. The career's over. And it wasn't until much later in around 2008, I actually a little before this, in 2006, I met with my brother-in-law and a good friend of mine. And we were going to create a web series. We all worked in various versions of TV. I did stuff for PBS and Discovery Channel and that sort of thing. My brother-in-law was a technical director for the NBC affiliate here. My good friend, he did a lot of basically dubbing anime for various entities. And we were going to create a web series. This was a time when they didn't have this. Netflix wasn't online yet. Hulu didn't exist yet, I don't think. So our big goal was to put this on Vimeo and YouTube. and we were going to make a fortune off this web series. And then we proceeded to start creating. I basically created a treatment for what would have been the most epically expensive television series of all time that we never stood a chance of making.
Right.
And I thought, I want to get a grip on this story. So I wrote a book based on the story. I ended up writing an entire book. And I thought, this is great, but I don't know if I want to try this other route again. And so this traditional route. And so I started looking around at self-publishing options, and I discovered, the rudiments of what we know today as CreateSpace and KDP and that sort of thing. And I just started pulling it together. I had a design background, so I designed a cover, and then I foolishly wrote book 1 of 3 on the cover of this book, which screwed me for like the next 6 years. But no, it was amazing. Nobody beat down a path to my door to give me money for that book, but it started to sell in increments, and it sparked an interest in that world. And from then I just started publishing more and more. I've had things published in more traditional outlets, magazines and that sort of thing, but the self-publishing stuff was just kind of hit home for me. And I've always said, if someone, I'm kind of like Amanda Hawking in a way. If someone came along and said, here's a contract for $2 million, well, okay, all right, take the book,
Consider it, right?
I'll do it under the right conditions and the right terms. I
Fair
will
enough.
consider traditional. But for the most part, I've really enjoyed, my career has been interesting. I swapped genres. As you may know, I was writing sci-fi and fantasy for years. And in 2016, I switched to thrillers on a dare. My good friend Nick Thacker dared me to write a thriller, and I did. And that book went on. It became a bestseller, and it actually won some awards, and it actually made me more money than all my other books combined. And I suddenly I'm a thriller author. And I enjoy it. I found a new calling with that. So that's the sort of end to end with a few gaps.
Yeah, quite a few gaps in there, I'm sure. So, I mean, you're doing thrillers now, but do you still have a hankering for science fiction tales?
Man, I am constantly thinking of sci-fi ideas, and what I've decided, I adjust my strategy as I go. I've got a goal to knock out. As of the 26th of January, I have 4 full-length books in this Dan Kotler Archeological Thriller series that I write, and a novella. My goal is to I'm aiming to try to get 12 books total, hopefully this year. I think I can do it. I've derailed myself a couple of times. I'm happy to go into why, but I've derailed myself a couple of times. So maybe I'll have 10 this year. But the thing is, what I'm thinking is I want to get to a point where I've got a nice bulky, or bulked up backlist of books in that series. And then I want to start alternating, write a Dan Kotler thriller, write a sci-fi book. I don't have a problem with sort of splitting my genre a little. I think I'm probably always going to be considered a thriller writer, and that is absolutely fine with me. But, being able to just express, and I'll probably do a lot more short fiction as well.
Right.
I have actually considered doing do a novel, do a short story, and just alternate like that as a way to break things up. But
okay, so you mentioned derailing. You got derailed. We all get derailed in many ways. What I'm the derailing stories are there's far-reaching. There's lots of different ways you get derailed. What I think is most important is, how do you plan on getting re-railed or back on track?
Right. It's not about, you don't have to worry as much about being derailed, because that's just going to happen in your life. I think, though, that if you have a commitment to this sort of steady progress, you've got a daily word count, for example. I'm always going to hit that. Right now it fluctuates for me over time, depending on the responsibilities in my life. Right now it's set at 2,500. It was 5,000. And I regularly go over that word count, but I have to hit that minimum.
You set that baseline for per day, right?
Yeah. Once I judge every year, I take a look at, what's my workload like? What was it like over the past 6 months? And that'll let me set the next quarter. So for this quarter, it's 2,500 words. At the end of the quarter, I'll take a look again and see how I did, and if I averaged 5,000 words a day, then I'll make 5,000 my minimum. And I think we get stuck sometimes on, we have to do everything exactly by the plan. I think we're much better off having a process and making the process sort of malleable, so that we can adjust when things do derail us. When we've got, a heavier workload, if we have day jobs, I'm fortunate in that, I don't necessarily have to have a day job. But I'm incredibly grateful for Draft Digital. I love being a part of this community, being active in this community, and Draft Digital is such a beloved part of that community. And the work I do there, it can get pretty intensive. I mean, I can get pretty busy.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of busy though that's almost re-energizing at times. And you probably know what I mean. Sometimes you come away drained and you don't feel like writing. The writing for me, by the way, is first. If I get up in the morning and I write.
Okay.
Anything else that happens after that happens. If I can do some additional writing in the afternoon or evening, I will. But the writing is the first thing. If I don't do the writing first thing, my whole day is sour.
And that's why sometimes every once in a while, on those rare occasions, you don't have a smile on your face. It's probably because you didn't get that baseline workout done.
Yeah, you can tell. My wife knows. You ask my wife. Kevin's grumpy. Did he do any writing today? No, he didn't do any. I can tell he didn't do any writing today, and she knows.
That's funny.
I think though that to the point of how do you get back on the rails? I mean, you have to know in advance that there are going to be times when life happens, and I like what Stephen King said, that writing is a support system for life, not the other way around. Right. I use my experiences, my day-to-day experiences, my travel, my everything I encounter in my life as fuel, as grist for the mill, basically, to produce something that my readers are going to love. And the readers understand frustration. They understand plans being derailed. My characters need to be able to deal with their plans being derailed. That's like the perfect practice, right? Yeah, it's all about knowing your goal. I know I want to write a new Dan Kotler Thriller by X date, so I know I got to buckle down and get it done, whether it's fun or not. Thank God it's almost always fun.
Yeah.
And on the days when it's not fun, you have to decide that this is the work. And this is, if you truly are in it for the right reasons, and the right reasons being, I want to tell a story and I want readers to love and enjoy that story. It makes it a lot easier to come back to that page every day. And I've never had writer's block. I will just freely admit right now, I have had plenty of days where I didn't feel like writing, but I was never blocked. If I forced myself through and did the work, I didn't have trouble coming up with words. They weren't always good words. They were sometimes crappy words.
But they were words.
That's what editing is for. Right,
yeah,
exactly.
That's true. So you mentioned Draft Digital. I'm going to want to get into that. But before we go there, I want to talk a little bit about your Wordslinger podcast and how long you've been doing that and what drove you to want to do that podcast.
I back in late 2013, very late, like near the end of the year, I decided I'd been listening to other podcasts, yours. I'd listened to Kobo Writing Life and a few others out there. And like every author who starts listening to podcasts, I had to start a podcast. It's in the bylaws. So, I wanted to start something, and I didn't want it to be a purely writing podcast when I started it. I figured there's enough of those. But I had a couple of reasons for wanting to do it that above and beyond just, I thought it might be cool. One, I had a radio background, so I figured I could leverage that. But I also saw this as an opportunity to talk to people I found inspiring, talk to people that I thought might have something to teach me. So honestly, it all started very selfish. Like I started the podcast because I wanted an excuse to talk to people. Back in the 90s, I started a webzine. That's what they were called back then, before anyone had coined the phrase blog or anything like that. I started a zine, and I did that exclusively because when I was working in radio, I learned this trick of sorts, of creating something that gives you credibility, so that you can create inroads to talk to people, to get products to review, that sort of thing. So building authority and credibility with some service. And radio shows, people put a lot of stock in radio, but the fact is a lot of the shows start off as someone had an idea and they had the right resources to get it rolling. And it gives a lot of credibility to the host. But they're just normal people. There's nothing special about anybody in radio necessarily.
Except they often have a nice smooth voice like yours.
Right. Which is something, I don't know. I think you can cultivate a good voice, maybe. Right. I don't know. I like that people they like my voice. I get comments on it all the time, but I grew it myself, but I didn't have anything to do with it. But I had done that with the magazine. And then so I had that philosophy in my head that I could create something that would give me credibility and give me inroads to talk to people. If you've ever read Tim Ferriss's book, 4 Hour Workweek, he talks about doing things like reaching out to someone you want to interview for informational interviews, right? And a lot of times these people are a lot more willing to talk to you if you have some kind of credential behind you. So I created the Wordslinger podcast essentially to give me that credential, something I could leverage in order to get in and talk to. I just interviewed Steve Barry, thriller writer Steve Barry. I interviewed David Brin and Larry Niven. I've interviewed guys that I grew up reading, right? Yeah. And it's fantastic. And you know this. I mean, you've done this as well. You talk to these people that are legendary, and you can gain so much from them. But I actually did something I think really made the difference, really makes my show different, which is I've opened it up. I talk to authors and entrepreneurs and really anybody that I find interesting and inspiring, and that I think can add something to my life and to the life of my listeners. And that means I talk to people who may have nothing to do with publishing. They may have nothing to do with anything anybody cares about. I interviewed a guy, he's an octogenarian who has a program called Never Leave the Playground. He's in his 80s, and he does things like, he'll stretch a rope between two posts in his yard and tightrope walk for the fun of it. And he's all about go out and challenge yourself and do something, physical and entertaining, So that has nothing to do with writing, except what a great mindset to be in as an author, right? What a great idea to look around you and say, because he's like, the world is my gym. We can look around us in the same way and say, the world is my office. The world is my inspiration. The world is every resource I need to be a good author, to be an inspired author. So that's what the show is, really. And in the end, as selfish as my initial motives may have been, in the end, it's for the listener to give them something else to gravitate toward, to learn about that they might not have been exposed to otherwise. I love talking to big name authors, and I'll always chat with them if I can land them on the show. But I think every interview I've done, even the ones with authors no one's ever heard of, even the ones with people, I interviewed guys who do green tech for homes, right. Like insulated windows. Every one of those interviews has some little tidbit of information, inspiration that I think is just, can just enrich an author's life. So it is aimed at authors. I say authors and entrepreneurs a lot, but it is really primarily aimed at authors, but it's all about that background story.
So. Oh, for sure. I mean, yeah, because the inspiration does come from anywhere and anyone. And there is so much. I always find this when I listen to your podcast or, the Creative Pen or one of the podcasts, and the guests this week is not something that I think I'll find interesting, because it's a topic I've never been interested in. Right. I still find such gems of insight and wisdom that come from the personal experience that they're sharing is absolutely fascinating. So I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I've taken a lot. I've included stuff I've learned from the podcast in a lot of my books, especially the thrillers. And it's fascinating because those are the little tidbits that I'll inevitably get an email about. You know,
Those
a
little
reader will
chunks.
say, "Yeah," and some of them are like, "No, there's no way that's you completely made that up." They're offended that I would put such fiction in my fiction. And I'll point them to an interview. Like, here's a guy who tightrope walks in his backyard.
Well, I mean, it's an extra color for your palette when you're creating characters, when you're creating scenes. It's absolutely phenomenal. So you've got this going on. You've got the dedicated word count, but then you also have the job that keeps you sometimes more busy than busy because you're traveling, representing Draft to Digital at conferences around the world, interacting with authors, which I know you enjoy dramatically. Can you talk a little bit about Draft to Digital?
Okay, at our heart, Draft to Digital, we're a publishing aggregator, which means that we'll take your book and distribute it to all the big names, Kobo, for example, Amazon now, Apple. No longer iBooks, or it won't be iBooks. It'll be books, I think, within the next few weeks. Barnes and Noble, all of them, and we have a whole bunch of resources that are just free for the author to use that make it much easier for an author to build and grow their author business. And things like ebook conversion, and we have a free print ready layout that you can do. We've got the automated in matter that we can do for you, and we can keep your also buy page up to date. We've got all these great tools, and what makes us interesting, this is one of the things that attracted me. So when I first started with these guys, the reason I even came on their radar was I was already out there talking about them. I was already talking them up. I was already a fan of the company, and it's been kind of a privilege and an honor for them to they're like, well, here's some money to do the exact same thing you're doing, and also a few extras, but go off and talk, be a part of the community, and talk us up. And I was thrilled to do that. The company itself, it's just the guys who founded it. It's founded by an author and two of his programming buddies. They're all geniuses. They're all much smarter than me, and they all care. And that's the thing that just stood out the most from the first second I met these guys. I reached out to Chris Austin on LinkedIn one time, and he's the CEO. And I just let him know, like, I love your company. I've talked to Dan Wood. You guys really represent something that I wish everyone who worked with the author community represented. They actually, I don't know. I'm not going to go too potty mouth here, but I mean, they give a crap, right? I mean, they actually care about the individual author and the individual author's experience through all of it. All the things that we do at Draft to Digital are free for the author, even if they don't distribute through us. All those tools that we built, they can come in and use, even if they don't use us to go out to the various sales channels. If they do go through us, we take a 10% cut of royalty for every sale. But I think that's a convenience fee, man. I mean, that's like, for the cool dashboard and all the resources that we offer and everything, the customer support alone, author support is the number one thing. If you Google Draft to Digital and support, you'll see rave reviews everywhere you go. Because we are, a bunch of real life humans. Our support team, they sit in an office in Oklahoma City, and I'm in Houston. I'm not in Oklahoma City, but I mean, we're all active on social media. We answer email. There are phone calls. We prefer email. If you need help right away, email's a better way to go. I'm supposed to start emphasizing that. But you'll get real people who are concerned about your problem and want to solve your problem. And 9 times out of 10, we can solve your problem. That 1 time out of 10 that we can't, it's usually something just so far beyond anyone's control, we're not going to be able to help.
Right.
But we sure will try, So
that's fantastic.
Draft Digital has been an amazing company. It's opened a lot of doors for me being there. I've really just appreciated everything that, there's so much love for the company that it's actually quite easy to be the director of marketing for Draft Digital in some ways.
Yeah.
In fact, I make the job harder because I'm constantly adding to my own workload.
Right.
I'm shooting videos and stuff now. I do a lot of speaking engagements. I do a lot of podcasts. I write a lot of stuff that goes on Medium and elsewhere. And that's, I keep adding to my workload because the biggest chunk of our marketing is basically word of mouth, and that almost takes care of itself.
Yeah. Well, so you talked about the free tools and the automated in matter, which I can't express enough how ingenious it is. And you took the automated in matter and developed another free tool in universal book links with books2read.com. And I continue to express to authors just how easy this makes it, whether you're self-published or traditionally published. You can use this tool to create a single link for all the retailers.
Even if you're not an author, if you are a book blogger, if you are, anyone who in any capacity promotes authors and their work,
right?
You can use books2read.com, the universal book links. You can use those things whether or not you distribute a book yourself. Right. And the gist of that is, and you hit on it. I mean, it's one link that will send readers to everywhere your book is sold online. It's customizable. If you can use it without having an account, but the only way to get some of the advanced features is to go ahead and get an account,
right?
Which doesn't cost you anything. It's a free account. But you can, at that point, you can customize the URL. And I like to get it's books2read.com / whatever, your book title, your course name, whatever, right? So I try to get a books to read URL for each of my book titles. And then you've got so first of all, it's evergreen. So when you first jump in, you can grab a link from any online storefront, Amazon, Kobo, anybody, for your book's product page, drop it in there and hit create my UBL, and it'll scan all the major sales channels online to find your book, and then include that link in your results, basically, right? And then once you've got that, you can go ahead and customize the link, or you can leave it alone. Doesn't matter. When readers click on that link, it'll take them briefly to a page where they can select their preferred storefront. So if I like to read on Kobo, I click Kobo, and it'll ask, do you want to make this your preferred storefront? And I say yes. And then anytime I click on a universal book link from that point forward, yours or anyone else's, I'll go instantly in one click, I'll go instantly to the product page for that book on Kobo or Amazon or Apple Books or wherever, whatever I chose. You don't have to choose a preferred store. You can leave it open if you like, but that gives the reader a very streamlined experience. And then you get some perks that I think are awesome. By the way, Universal Book Links, it was the first thing I helped launch when I started with the company. It's my favorite tool. It's my favorite tool. It's the one thing we do that, I mean, I love everything we do, but this is the one that excites me the most, right? Because it's so versatile and anyone can use literally anyone can use it. So you can actually, not only can you customize the URL, but you get some data. So you can see how many clicks you're getting and also where they're going, right? We added a filter so that you can search your UBLs. You can find the one you're looking for, because I got a lot of them. I got thousands of them. But you can also add your affiliate codes. They'll be in the background. So if you have an Amazon associate code, if you have a Barnes & Noble affiliate code, Kobo, even, and this is the one that cracks me up and it makes me laugh. Smashwords. You can put your affiliate account for Smashwords in here.
Cool.
And what happens is someone clicks your link and they buy a book, or they click through and they buy something else entirely. You get your affiliate dollars. We don't take any of that. It's all you.
Oh,
If
you
don't
don't
put
you don't
anything,
even keep like a
nope,
penny or anything. That's going
not
straight
a
to the
red,
wow.
yeah,
So this
not
is
a
amazing
rupee.
for book bloggers and
Yeah.
people like that too.
Yeah, it can be a revenue source. It's a way to get a little extra scratch from your the stuff that you're already doing. What it does for authors. Go ahead. You had a question?
Can I ask a question about?
Yes.
It now links to all the ebook stores.
Yes.
Are there options going to be available to include print and audio for the same title? Is that something
So,
that's potentially being worked on?
print and audio are things that we're becoming more and more involved in.
Yeah.
Without saying things that could potentially get me fired and or sued. I don't know that I'd ever be sued. I don't know that I'd ever be fired. But let's just say things are in the works. And we'll leave it at that.
Fair enough.
Tantalizing bit of
okay, but things are in the works. You guys
Things
did
are in the works.
officially announce some
Yes.
forthcoming expansions to these
Yes.
great tool sets, including author landing pages.
Oh,
I'd love to
man.
hear more about that.
So this could vie with UBLs as my favorite thing. It's not out yet, so it still has a way. It still has to wait. Soon though, within the next couple of weeks, I'm thinking. Probably by the time this episode goes live, it'll be out there. But we are introducing our author pages, and this is an in-demand feature, and we're stupid excited about this. But they'll give you a single platform for directing your readers to your books, to all your work. Okay,
a single agnostic platform, not just an Amazon landing page.
Right, because of our universal book links, it'll be a single landing page that can send your readers to wherever they prefer to buy your books, and it won't be cluttered with a ton of links.
Right.
So I have my author page. I already use universal book links on my author page, but this would actually be much simpler because every time I publish a book, it would automatically be updated. So if I publish through Draft to Digital, there's going to be we're going to add features this as we go, but I mean, it's going to, starting off, it'll have a bio, an author bio, it'll have a photo, it'll have a list of your books, and that gets, like I said, it gets updated as you grow. And you can, for authors, I think one of the cool things about this I talk to a lot of will-be and just starting authors who don't have a website and they don't know what they can do to build a website, or they don't have the funds, or they don't have the resources or the savvy or whatever it is. For some reason, they don't have an online presence. I honestly feel like this could be the perfect online presence for authors. We're going to include a way for you to invite people to join your mailing list. So, you'll still need to have a service like MailChimp or something similar, but you can actually invite people to get on your mailing list from this page. So what we wanted was a true author page that's under your control. You go to anyone else, and this, Mark. I mean, so even some of the best author pages out there, you don't have any real control over what's on that page.
Right.
And while we will, provide a format and there are only going to be so many options you can have, you still get some options here you don't get elsewhere.
I know. God, that's so sweet. See, I wanted to build this when I was at Kobo. Wanted so desperately to build this. And then, things happened and other priorities took place. And when I saw you guys announce this, I was so thrilled because I think the industry needs something like this.
No, it absolutely does. And I know there have been services out there that tried to do this. And it's difficult. So I think where we're different from those services, and one of them recently, it went under, and I was sad to see it go, actually, but because it was so well done. But one of the reasons I think that we'll be able to get through this is that we built a foundation first on the idea of books to read, right?
Right.
The universal book links are the magic formula for making this work, because they allow the reader to click through and go to wherever they prefer to read a book. So it makes the whole thing much simpler. We're going to introduce something alongside this called book tabs, which are book product pages, basically. The book tabs they'll have, they'll use the universal book links, There'll basically be a landing page for that specific book online. And then you'll be able to do, eventually you're going to be able to do custom bookshelves. I mean, some of these we're going to iterate over the year. These are forthcoming additions, but there's going to be a whole bunch of really smooth, really sweet additions to this as we go. But the author pages and the book tabs, those are coming out pretty soon. They'll probably be out by the time this interview goes live. Very, very, very excited.
That is exciting. I mean, the innovations, I love the fact that Draft to Digital took somebody who's in the trenches, somebody who is part of the community, and somebody who really understands all of the elements of writing, not just the butt in chair and fingers on keyboard and getting those words out every day, but the importance of connecting with people in a positive way. I think that was a brilliant move on their part to bring in a person like you. I want to keep going, but I also have to be respectful of your time. So
you got me. You take me as long as you need.
Let people know where they can find out more about Draft to Digital, but more importantly, where can they find out more about Kevin Tumlinson?
Well, of equal importance. Okay. So you can find out everything you need to know about Draft to Digital at draftdigital.com. And we have the near misses, so you can spell that pretty much any way you want, but it's draft2digital.com. Follow us on, if you start following us on Twitter and the blog has always got content that's just aimed right at the indie publisher. It's great content. I write most of it. So I'm a little biased.
Biased at how awesome it is, but it is amazing content.
It is pretty amazing. Now, if you want to learn more about me, you can hop over to kevintumlinson.com and wordslingerpodcast.com. They both lead to essentially the same site. I haven't pointed at a page there, the podcast there, but you can listen in on the podcast. You can check out my books. You can drop me a line. I love chatting with people, so feel free to ask me anything. I'm there for you. That's what. And then it's Draft to Digital. Draft to Digital is there for the indie author community. That's just what we are. So.
And Kevin, thank you so much for the information, but more importantly, the inspiration that you've given today.
Man, I appreciate it, man. You've been one of my heroes in the business since I started, and it's been a real honor to know you, man. So thanks for having me on the show.
I know I can't be the only one who feels inspired after listening to that wonderful conversation with Kevin Tumlinson. Thanks so much, Kevin. Kevin's as dedicated to his writing as he is to helping bring a positive light to the author community. You've got to love a person like that. Draft to Digital made an excellent move when they decided to bring Kevin onto their amazing team. Though there are so many things I can take from our conversation, I wanted to draw from Kevin's mention of plan versus process. He spoke about having a process that was malleable. And I think that leads to a great way for authors to deal with the issues that arise whenever a plan doesn't unroll the way we initially intended. When that happens, we tend to spend so much time beating ourselves up and criticizing ourselves for not hitting the plan targets. Is all your focus on the execution of the plan? If that's the case, then what happens when that plan fails? You beat yourself up. When I first met my partner Liz, I was impressed with the attention she paid to process. She regularly used phrases when we were getting to know one another, such as when I was early on in my rediscovering of myself as a newly separated and single man, of this part of my former married self. She referred to that as, it's all part of a process. That stuck with me. Because prior to that, my previous grand plans from the prior 20 years of being with my wife, they were cut short in a single instant. It was something that was completely out of my control. Okay, of course, we can debate about whether or not I had any control. I know I did have control, but that sudden realization, that sudden shock of what we had let happen, threw a complete monkey wrench into those plans, those grand plans I had had for a lifetime plan. Now, I could have focused on the failed plan and admittedly for several weeks, I did. I ate my ice cream and I wallowed in self-pity and I listened to a ton of Phil Collins music. I did that for a while, but then I began to look at the process. How was I going to move on from this devastating blow in my life? How was I going to get past this? How was I going to heal? How was I going to learn? And how was I going to grow from it? I found that by embracing the process, by embracing the change that was suddenly a huge part of the center of my life, I found a way to re-navigate myself. By focusing on the process, I found myself in a spot where I realized I hadn't actually been all that happy in a long time. What happens when a plan to write a particular book or finish a particular writing project fails? If you focus on the process rather than the plan, can you work that into something that you learn and grow from? If you focus on the process rather than the plan, can that be something you continue to evolve through and become a better writer for it? I've recently gone through another big change in my life. I left my full-time role in the industry working at Kobo as Director of Self-Publishing and Author Relations. The desire from that was to have more time for my own writing and for the personal projects and consulting and coaching that I so enjoyed. There wasn't, admittedly, much of a plan, but I definitely embraced the process. And Liz helped me by being engaged and supportive as I've been going through that process. I only did the first real solid bit of new and fresh writing just in the last few weeks. It was certainly behind the loose plans I had in mind when I'd set out. But the process of getting myself here was more important. I had to stumble. I had to go through a few false writing starts. But I embraced the process, and things slowly fell into place. Just like in the previous changes in my personal life. I'm at a great place, both personally and as a writer. I'm still up at 5 and 5:30 a.m. every morning, and I'm spending those first few hours of my day doing creative writing, as opposed to the other writing that I'm doing later in the day, non-fiction writing and emails and blog posts and content for this podcast and content for Spirits Untapped and networking and communications with other people and other non-fiction projects that I'm working on. It's interesting for me to reflect on all those things and to think about how, like in the wise words of Kevin, that focus on a malleable process rather than on a rigid and fixed plan has helped me personally. Thanks, Kevin. Great things for me to reflect on. Now, if you're interested in learning more about my own writing and the process behind my writing, I was recently honored to be a guest on Patricia McClynn's fantastic reader-centric podcast, Authors Love Readers. In it, Patricia and I talk a lot about the story behind the writing, the inspiration behind the various tales that I've written. It's more geared for readers as listeners than for writers, but I had an absolutely delightful time talking and laughing with Pat as we explored my own processes and my own writing, and you may be interested in listening to that just because it digs into more of the things that I've just reflected on. Heck, I found that the interview I'd done with Pat helped me to re-embrace my own writing persona. Speaking of embracing my writing persona, you're going to hear forthcoming interviews with Natasha Bajema and Stina Holmes in future episodes of Stark Reflections that also did wonders at helping to re-inspire me and refocus me on what's important in my writing, and that's the readers. But that's for future episodes. I'm just teasing that out here now. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you like this podcast, please do leave a review for it via the podcatcher of your choice, or share it with someone that you think would benefit from these reflections. Until next week, and until episode 16, I wish you good reflections and good writing.
Thank you for listening to the Stark Reflections podcast. You can find show notes for each episode at starkreflections.ca.
The music for this podcast, Laser Groove, was composed and produced by Kevin MacLeod. Check out more of Kevin's great music at incomptech.com.